Hi, I'm Johnny Lewis, and I want to thank you for watching my building finance case study for Module 12 for Class 854. The summary of the case is that there are these district budgeting priorities that require all district funds are intended to support only core content areas when schools receive those funds. And so Briardale Elementary School and their Principal Santos, have to use fundraisers to support supplemental curriculum for the arts, foreign language, and music. There's an education foundation that has been established to raise this money each year. This year, a new parent, Mr. Bailey, has been selected to lead the foundation. Mr. Bailey develops a plan for leading a split the pot type raffle for cash. This is based on his experience leading fundraisers in a fraternity. And he takes this recommendation to the foundation board, and they appear to just kind of rubber stamp the situation and move forward with approval. After successfully selling tickets on the evening of the big drawing and the celebration of one of the school's biggest fundraisers, the police arrived to arrest Mr. Bailey for organizing a raffle for cash event. His arrest, the budgeting debacle, and Mr. Santos all wind up on the front page of the local paper in controversy. Here's a look at some of the legal and ethical issues at play. Both Mr. Bailey and Mr. Santos seem to be leading this event and working in a very kind of insular manner. If the foundation board had developed a fundraising plan together and had consistent policies for doing things together, if more people had been involved, they likely would have discovered that they were breaking the law, that these sort of raffles were illegal. Instead, we're told Mr. Santos does the orientation alone with Mr. Bailey, and that Mr. Bailey develops this whole fundraising plan on his own and just sort of seeks the rubber stamp approval of the board. Mr. Santos could have insisted on a team approach in orientation. Number two, depending on state or local laws, it is potentially a legal issue that the district is not providing adequate funding towards arts education at the school and has left it up to the staff to fundraise. While it may not be illegal, there are definitely ethical issues in the decision not to provide any support for these important pieces of curriculum and forcing school leaders to compete with one another for fundraising by insisting on tight controls of the school budget. Mr. Bailey has used his position at the school to engage in an illegal activity, even if it was without his knowing, which we assume that it is, even though it doesn't quite tell us that he didn't know. The money will need to be returned. This creates the potential for a budget shortfall that could occur as a result of this failed fundraiser. The media coverage has likely cost Mr. Santos, the district, and the foundation trust in their ethical leadership that the community has placed in them by supporting these fundraisers and the foundation and that provides art curriculum for several years. So as a building leader, Mr. Santos is ultimately responsible for the financial outcomes of the school. He knew about the raffle, which turned out to be illegal, and it has the potential to create a budget shortfall. He's likely put his job in jeopardy. It's unknown as to whether he and Mr. Bailey knew that it was illegal, though it tends to imply that they didn't know. So he will definitely, if it was illegal and he knew, then he will definitely be fired, I'm sure. If not, it's questionable that he's going to be able to recover from this incident as an ethical leader with staff, students, and the community. And then the last thing, the district could face litigation from Mr. Bailey and foundation members or even Mr. Santos if they find themselves in ongoing legal disputes related to this event, or if the negative publicity affects any of those people's employment. So here's a synthesis. Briarwood appears to be missing a team culture that could help create transparency in this kind of moment, that could have provided valuable feedback about decisions. If Mr. Braley had developed a team of leaders to create a fundraising plan and entrusted them with making it happen, this whole scenario would have been avoided. Mr. Santos was responsible for his orientation. There doesn't really seem to be a policy for that, and so he holds responsibility for that issue as well. The district's choice to only fund core content and force schools to fundraise to support arts education is a root cause of this issue as well. The intense pressure of this situation that it creates for the principal and for foundation leaders to compete with their colleagues at local schools to supply such an important part of their curriculum seems unfair. the need for more local school control of the budget appears to be an issue. And so these are a synthesis of facts as it relates to different people. There's the principal, Mr. Santos, who's been placed in a difficult position with a rookie fundraiser and an important role with no processes, it seems, for doing fundraisers and a lack of control of the school's budget. Mr. Bailey, who's the foundation board chair, Mr. Bailey apparently has not engaged the team of foundation in developing a plan or carrying out together. We are not told if the foundation has strategies or rules that they have to follow for leading fundraisers, but it doesn't appear that Mr. Bailey has followed them if there are. Instead, he's developed his own plan and seems distracted by his desire to beat a school rival fundraiser. And then there's the foundation board. The members of the foundation need to be held responsible for their part in this as well. They appear to have very passive leadership. They elected a brand new parent to lead. They let him do all the work with little guidance. We aren't told if they have policies or procedures for doing fundraising. If they did, they didn't follow them. And so there's an issue there as well. And so now we're seeing the principal, the school, Mr. Bailey, suffer as a result of this controversy. As it results to the place of the school, the people who are involved in that, students will likely lose trust in their school leadership. They're going to potentially lose key resources for arts education. The faculty morale is likely to be affected by the appearance of indiscretion by school leadership, by a lack of resources, and by the frustrated students and parents that these teachers will hear from first. And then the district is now going to face questions likely for the way that they fund things, for perceived indiscretions, and they have to decide how they're going to handle Mr. Santos and their interactions with school foundations. And then in the community, people in the community have supported these school fundraisers for years. They've provided important curriculum that's likely meant that they've provided a lot of resources. Now they're going to be likely to question future fundraisers and the ethics of the school, and that's going to threaten the funding process as well. And then parents. Parents now have several reasons for concern. There's the appearance of irregularities from school leadership. There's the curriculum funding system that seems questionable, and there's the foundation's use of resources and the questions it creates for them in that regard. And so as it relates to programs, key things at play are controls related to the foundation fundraising methods. We aren't told of any controls or policies. Controls related to foundation leadership choices and their training, and then the district funding model and local school budget control. When considering could the conflict or the decision be damaging to stakeholders or the community, as we've kind of already touched on, the situation could be damaging to their district and their relationship with the community because they're going to face questions. The community, students, and staff are all likely going to lose trust in each other. It's going to create some combative relationships. Other schools in the district, we're told, use this same fundraising method, so it's probably going to affect some of them as well. And then Mr. Braley's at risk of legal expenses, and the district is at risk of litigation. Important stakes in the outcome: the principal, Mr. Braley, student, school district, school staff, the community, the foundation board, and the foundation itself. And then have all the relevant stakeholders been consulted? I think that's a key issue, is that there's not a lot of consulting going on. Mr. Bailey has done the most of this work in isolation without the insight of board members, teachers, or community members. There doesn't appear to be a lot of mechanisms for encouraging communication among these groups. Some things that would be helpful to know about this situation. It'd be helpful to know if Mr. Bailey had engaged the foundation board at all in planning this event, or if he just kind of did it on his own, what their feelings were about the foundation or about the fundraiser. It'd be helpful to know what legal responsibility the district has to fund arts education in their state. It'd be helpful to know what the foundation board and president selection process consists of, and then just what systems exist at all for the foundation. So with all that in mind, do we know enough to make a decision? There are some issues that are going to leave the principal in a tough spot unless the district agrees to change funding methods, but Mr. Santos can work in the meantime to solidify controls and changes to the foundation process. And so here are some options and consequences that are available to Mr. Santos. Option 1, Mr. Santos could do nothing, publicly blame the foundation leaders and district funding procedures for this situation. There's low staff turnover, we're told, so staff morale probably will eventually bounce back. Claiming no responsibility forces the district to fire him and risk litigation, or to support him and let him keep his job. And he appears to have good community relationships, and so not admitting any wrongdoing potentially could help the community trust him more quickly and encourage community support for him in his role. The consequences of him reacting this way, taking a defensive posture and not addressing his mistakes and the systemic issues, it's likely going to lead to more and bigger problems later. We're not fixing anything by choosing this option. While some may support Mr. Santos, others on staff and in the community are probably going to question his ability to lead ethically because he didn't act after this incident, because he wasn't transparent in his response. That's going to lead to turnover in staff probably, and some trouble with future initiatives. And then Mr. Santos risks a combative relationship with the school board if this is the position he takes. Option 2, Mr. Santos can admit his own mistakes and work with the foundation, staff, and community to create procedures and controls that would prevent future incidents like this one. And so the supporting arguments, transparency and admission of mistakes can ultimately lead to greater trust. Involving the staff and the community and the foundation members is going to result in more potentially effective solutions. You're going to hear from more voices. And by leaving the district funding issue out of his response, he has the potential of garnering more support from the district. The consequences of this could be that admission of any mistake could open the door to litigation. Changing procedures and controls could ruffle the feathers of foundation leadership. They could perceive that as suggesting that this was all their fault. By leaving the district funding issue out of his response, Mr. Santos and the foundation, they're going to continue to feel this pressure annually with no end in sight. And this pressure certainly appears to have been part of why the foundation was able to take such a risky initiative on so quickly. And then option 3, Mr. Santos could use this as a moment to pressure the district to change their funding model and allow more local school control. This could create a media firestorm out of this issue as the potential to take pressure from him and put it on the school board. Until the school board funding model changes, all schools in the district are going to be forced to pressure volunteers into this sort of extreme fundraising. And pressuring the district could rally stakeholders to support Mr. Santos. The consequences of this option, it creates a wedge with the district. It threatens to backfire and lead to him losing his job or having a combative relationship with the board. The issues of foundation controls and procedures are going to go unaddressed, and it's going to open the door for more issues in the future. And again, by taking a defensive posture, Santos threatens to lose trust from key stakeholders. And so evaluating our options, option 1, it's very unlikely this is going to do anything to move anybody forward. This is strictly a political option. Option 2 shows some ethical leadership. It works to correct mistakes, but it doesn't get to this root cause conversation about school funding. Option 3 addresses the school funding issue, but again, it's a very political response, and it doesn't deal with the foundation issues that are addressed. And so my suggestion is that the best option is to combine option 2 and 3. In the short term, address the issues with the foundation, transparency, team culture, community involvement, and procedures for the foundation board to create controls. And in the long term, begin a healthy and non-combative dialogue with district leadership and the administrative colleagues about increasing local school control of funding. Is this able to be implemented with the greatest care with all stakeholders? My suggestion is that we involve as many stakeholders as possible in the short-term solution, in seeking feedback and developing a clear policy for the foundation and encouraging transparency. And I think involving all community members in the solution, combining different options, and having both a short and long-term response suggests creativity. And so part 1, the short-term response would be to work with district legal team to compose a letter to the community, media that admits personal mistakes, focus on student needs, and invites the community to be part of the response. Meet with Mr. Barely, assuming that the police find he's not guilty of any wrongdoing, and the rest of the foundation board to suggest a team process for developing a team approach for leadership with an eye toward avoiding mistakes made in the raffle incident. And so part 1, the short-term response, asks the foundation board to create a structured plan that includes their vision and mission, a thorough orientation for leaders, a year of vice chairing to observe before taking over as the team lead, the creation of job descriptions, controls for fundraiser development and fund management, which include monthly bookkeeper audits, monthly reports, and annual